I've been struggling to think of a way to describe the all-new XPeng P7, and the best I can come up with is, mmm.
Welcome to Wheels Boy, where we cover the newest, coolest, and wildest vehicles from the Chinese car market. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Okay, I'll try to come up with something a little more eloquent than that. The P7 isn't just beautiful, it's striking, with a chiseled look that resembles an abandoned alien spaceship that we discovered floating through the universe, its origins unknown and its makeup baffling to the scientific community.
Is it a threat to humanity? Hard to say, but it's certainly alluring, especially when priced between about 31 and 37,000 USD here in China. Unfortunately, they have saddled this beautiful front-end design with the moniker of X-Smart Face, written in all caps, of course, which, let me think of a generous way to put this, it's extremely goofy. But then again, they could have named it the Ethan is a complete idiot who's never made a good YouTube video in his entire life face, and everything those bullies said about him at summer camp was absolutely true face, and I would have liked it just as much. If only I'd been this impeccably dressed back then. They'd have begged to be my friend instead of whacking me on the head with pool noodles. Despite what you might think, this square, broad face doesn't result in an absolutely heinous drag coefficient. In fact, it's just 0.201. I'm sure the designers could point to a million things they did to make this happen, but my personal favorite is the flush fit illuminated badge. The profile is thick, and the windows appear as mere slits in comparison to the heft of the body panels, but it's actually lower in height than the more curvaceous Xiaomi SU7. Speaking of the SU7, this thing does also come in some pretty cool colors, including this gorgeous blue-green and highlighter yellow. Big thumbs up for me for that. Standard wheels are 20 inches, but you can get this gorgeous 21-inch wheel as an added cost option. Underneath, Brembo brake calipers. That low height is accomplished at least in part by battery packs that measure only 109 millimeters. There are two varieties of pack. 74.9 kilowatt-hour LFP pack, making a claimed CLTC range of 702 kilometers, and a 92.2 kilowatt-hour NMC pack with a claimed range of 820 on the rear motor and 750 on dual motors like this.
All versions of the P7 come with an 800-volt charging architecture that allows them to charge from 10 to 80% in approximately 11 minutes. That means adding up to 525 kilometers of range in just 10 minutes.
This optional active rear wing produces about 90 kg of downforce at 230 kilometers per hour, which happens to be this car's top speed, and I highly doubt very many people are going to be exploring that very often. Still, pretty cool looking. That rear wing is attached to a hatchback rear opening which reveals 575 liters of space, including a very decent amount under the cargo floor here. If you lay down the second row, you can get up to 1,929. Lest we forget, it also has a front, which you can open using voice commands outside of the car. 小 P, 打开前备箱。
前备箱解锁了，用手动操作哦。
Don't worry, you can set it so it only responds to certain people's voices, not everybody's voice. In less good news, the frunk only measures 56 liters, which is big enough for your takeout, but that's about it. While I don't think XPeng interiors have ever been the most interesting on the market, the latest models have been getting increasingly generic. I'm very happy then to see they've injected some personality onto the interior of the all-new P7, even if it's just in the form of simple things like some aluminum look trim, a super cool, super slim instrument cluster, or this very sporting looking steering wheel, which is borderline a squeal or square wheel, but it's just big enough that it doesn't irk me. Speaking of personality, XPeng will tell you that their new AI bionic cockpit will produce a more humanized experience thanks to things like a 3-axis swiveling 15.6-inch center display, which tilts and turns as you speak to the AI voice assistant, like so. 你好, 小 P. Now, the screen can move in a variety of directions depending on who it's talking to, the driver, the passenger, the rear passengers. But what I find so funny is the fact that so many of these car companies end up sounding like an alien race trying to sell their cars to humans whenever they explain their interior features. It's like, hey, human, we give car screen face, make it look at you, it be your friend. Come on, I don't need my car to chat with me. I have a fiance and friends for that. All right, to be fair, my fiance is not always in the mood to talk to me, and by friends, I mean friend, but still, I prefer to keep this particular relationship strictly professional. Gimmicks aside, that center screen is really nice, including things like the clarity of the display, as well as the logic of the UI, and the response times of that voice command system, and the number of things that it can do. That last one's pretty much always been the case with XPeng models. In here, you've also got a digital rear view mirror, which is there to make up for the fact that you basically don't have a rear window, and an 87-inch AR HUD, that's augmented reality. Before I talk about that, though, I want to point out the fact that He Xiaopeng, the CEO of the company, has pointed out a bunch of times how much he doesn't like HUDs and how he doesn't think they're necessary on XPeng models. But finally, I think he realized all of his competitors were offering them, so he probably ought to as well. Anyways, it is, in addition to being massive, really, really crisp and clear with a bunch of information, including really advanced AR features that show the curvature of the road and give detailed navigation instructions. It's super nice. It's not the most interesting thing that's available in terms of HUDs on the market. This price point, you can also get the Xiaomi YU7 SUV, which has that full length or full width HUD bar, which is very cool, but it is a really good HUD. Heated, ventilated, and massaging leather seats with Alcantara inserts are standard on this car, as is the headrest-mounted speakers for the driver, which are part of the 23-speaker sound system, which is, again, standard. You can, however, get an added cost option, which is the zero-gravity mode for this passenger seat. I've only just realized that this thing has an English UI now and English voice assistant, which is good news if you are looking to export this car. Perhaps the subtlest and probably coolest feature on this car, though, is this little fingerprint-shaped button on this aluminum look trim. If you touch it, it can activate a command that you set. In this case, I've obviously chosen to have it open up the glove box, but if you long press, it opens up a menu where you can choose from a variety of things. You can open the front, open the trunk, turn on the reading lights, turn on the ventilated or heated seats on the driver's side, and the best part is, the same thing is available on the passenger side as well, so they can set it up to a custom button that will do whatever they want it to do. Having said that, and again, I hate to keep bringing up Xiaomi, but they've got that everything button that you can get in the YU7, which can be programmed to do pretty much anything inside of the car, up to and including opening the window and all this other stuff. That also can be placed in a lot more places in the car. So not only does it have more features, it's also more flexible in what it can do. Still, very cool. This is very cool. All of this car's features, functions, screens, etc. are controlled via a Qualcomm Snapdragon 8295P processor that includes the 8-inch rear screen, which is standard. It controls the air conditioning, the heated seats, and your media. That includes both music and videos if you like to watch your videos on a screen that is, let's be honest, a little too small and a little bit too low down to be comfortable, but to each their own. Below that screen are two 60-watt USB Type-C charging ports. The last generation P7 had pretty decent legroom, a little better than a Tesla Model 3, but its shoulder room and headroom weren't that great, especially if you tried to fit 3 people wide. Back in 2021, my old cameraman spent like half the day 3 wide in the backseat of a P7, and he still has nightmares about the neck pain that he experienced. While this new generation is a little bit lower than the last gen, it's actually longer in terms of overall length and wheelbase. Can you feel that in the back seat? Honestly, it's really hard to tell without getting from one into the other and adjusting them to the exact same seating position, but I'll just say it feels pretty decently spacious back here, and there's a little bit of space, assuming they don't have the seat all the way adjusted down, to stick your feet underneath. As for that pesky shoulder room and headroom, yeah, it's a little bit wider, you can feel that, and perhaps more importantly, it's now got this Alcantara roof liner, which is super soft and feels nice to lean your head against. All right, day 2 of filming, and I've gotten a cold, but no mere viral infection is going to stop me from sharing my driving impressions of the XPeng P7. And besides, now I get to do it in this sultry baritone. The XPeng P7 was one of the first Chinese cars I ever drove, and thought to myself, wow, not only do these guys have the tech advantage, they might actually be able to put together a pretty decent chassis as well. That was about 4 years ago, and the original P7 has definitely been surpassed in the market by cars like the BYD Seal, the Neo ET5, and newer cars such as the Lynk & Co Z10, and of course, the ubiquitous Xiaomi SU7. Those are the cars, obviously, that the P7, this new P7, is going up against. Let's talk about the specs. This car's rear motor version comes with 270 kilowatts and 465 newton meters of torque. The official 0 to 100 kilometer per hour times are 5.8 seconds for the LFP battery pack car and 5.4 seconds for the larger NMC pack. Note that both those times are considerably faster than the previous generation P7, at least a second or more faster. Then, of course, you have the dual motor, like this one. First of all, they've chosen to dub their dual motor powertrain Quantum X. Yeah, another goofy name for another pretty awesome thing. Whatever you call it, it has 437 kilowatts and 695 newton meters of torque, and a 0 to 100 kilometer per hour time, just 3.7 seconds. In the real world, this car is obviously very quick in all of its trims, but those specs aren't going to win you any arguments at the bar. If, however, you were to be able to get those people to exit the bar, get behind the wheel of this car, I think you could win them over pretty easily. And that's because while this car doesn't have the most eye-popping numbers, it does have a very good driving experience. The all-aluminum suspension is double wishbone front and 5-link in the rear, which is an upgrade over the 4-link of the previous generation. But the real upgrade comes in the form of the standard across all 3 trim levels air suspension with adjustable height and stiffness. The way this car smooths out bumps and filters out other harshness from the road puts it in contention as one of the best riding cars in this segment. Put simply, it really does feel like a more solidly built, more expensive car than its predecessor. It's also rather fun to drive as well. The steering is very direct and has a lovely heft to it, particularly when you put it into sport mode, or if you really want to push things into the racing mode that it has. That brings me around to conversations about the Xiaomi SU7. First of all, in terms of their driving dynamics, I don't think that this car is quite as sporty or engaging as the SU7. The SU7's front end does feel lighter, more athletic, and if it was just about raw driving pleasure, I would give the win to the SU7. But as an entire package, I think that this car is superior to that car. It also is very clearly heavily inspired by the SU7. I mean that both in the macro sense of they are both clearly pursuing the same audience of driving enthusiasts, and in the micro sense, the details. This steering wheel is very heavily inspired by that car's, with the knobs at the bottom, the driver assistance button on the left, this driving mode knob on the right, which if you press, puts the car into its boost mode, which gives you the highest possible power. And it is considerably quicker than if you just put it into sport mode, for example. There's also the aforementioned racing mode, which is similar to the master mode available on the dual-motor SU7 Max. It allows you to redistribute torque front to rear, making it more rear bias or more front-wheel drive bias. And it also shows things like your battery temperature, your motor temperature, and your brakes. It's pretty cool. Personally, I prefer to put it into rear-wheel drive mode. And I've heard that it's possible to turn off the traction control. Though, of course, as a mature, responsible, tax-paying citizen, I would never do that on a public road. I'm obviously poking fun at XPeng for following Xiaomi's lead when it comes to things like the placement of these buttons and their functions, but I'm really happy to see them there and to see them be able to control these kinds of things. I want to see more Chinese car manufacturers make enthusiast-oriented vehicles like this one. For starters, they've made some major changes when it came to hardware. Major flip-flops, depending on how you look at it. When we drove the P7 like 4 years ago, it was radar and cameras, no LiDAR units. But then they made a big push to put LiDAR units on a bunch of their cars, including an updated version of the P7 called the P7i with dual front LiDAR units. Now, with this latest car, and indeed their latest models like the P7 Plus, another different version of the P7, it uses radar and cameras. It does not have LiDAR units anymore. Oh, and by the way, their driver assistance system, the most advanced one, is now free. It's no longer an added cost option like it used to be. Oh, and we can't forget to mention the fact that they now have a self-developed driver assistance chip. It's called the Touring chip. There are 2 of them in this car, and they make a combined 2,250 tops of computing power. I think when I drove the XPeng P5 back in 2021 in Guangzhou, that thing had like 30 tops of computing power and was able to do pretty decent NOA or navigation on autopilot in the city. Anyways, it's also important to note the fact that that is more than 4 times as much computing power as the dual NVIDIA Orin X chips that were in that updated P7i that I mentioned before. I have long advocated for the use of LiDAR as an extra safety measure, a different kind of sensory input compared to radar and cameras. But I cannot deny the fact that, at least in the brief experience I've had with this car, this driver assistance system with this Touring chip is really, really good. I always say this in my reviews, but it drives, well, I don't say it about every system, but the good systems, it drives like an experienced driver. I was impressed by the small things it was able to do. For example, gently but firmly pushing into the lane next to it when in heavy traffic. It didn't just sit there like an idiot with its blinker on waiting for 100 meters of space. Or, for example, when passing a line of cars on the right, if it realized it didn't have space to pass them, then it would speed up, passing 3 or 4 cars at a time and getting in front of everybody at once. The same thing that I would do, and doing so safely as well. Another thing I always say with these systems is that they're far from perfect, and this one is no different. It has its own quirky behaviors. For example, I was exiting an elevated road, and it just seemed to want to drive into the middle of the 2 lanes of the off-ramp. I don't know why. Luckily, there was no cars around, so it wasn't an immediate danger, but it was a little bit disconcerting. A similar situation, I was exiting on an off-ramp, and it just kind of changed or drifted from one lane to the other without actually turning on its turn signal. These are the kind of things that make me say, okay, I cannot relax completely when using this system. But then again, you cannot and should not relax completely when using any system. Let us put aside big, scary topics like the reliability of driver assistance systems for a moment and talk about something a little more fun. On the steering wheel, there is a button here that you can customize. It can do things like open your trunk or activate your 360 camera, boring stuff. But it can also activate Road Rage Manager. This is a very simple and very effective function. What it does is use that giant heads-up display to show you throwing different emojis at the cars around you, or really whatever car's in front of you and that you're pointing at. If you're really mad at somebody because they're driving too slow in the lane or they just cut you off, don't beep at them, don't curse at them, just hit this button over and over again and throw poops and hammers and pigs and sandals at them until you feel surprisingly much better. It's certainly too early to refer to the original XPeng P7 as a classic, but it was an influential car, both for the Chinese car market and for the XPeng brand, so they had their hands full when it came time to design this successor. But when it comes to sophomore albums, I gotta say, this is a good one. All right, thank you so much for watching today's review. Be sure to check us out on all of our social media links in the description below. And as always, like, subscribe, and hit the bell.